optimism for many. Figures are telling us things are on the up in terms of production and employment. But how does that translate in terms of pounds, shillings and pence? As they say, I know we don't have shillings. Are you better off than you were, say, this time last year? Joining me now is Linda Hamilton-Pringle. Good morning to you, Linda.
Hi.
How does your situation now compare with, say, what it was like this time last year?
Well, last year at this time I was unemployed. My family and I were really struggling and depending on friends and family to help us financially to keep the roof over our head. And we received a food parcel from the church. We didn't use food banks, we hadn't got to that point, but I would say we were getting close. And I started a job in October, and the difference is just phenomenal. Having been unemployed, my attitude to work, I would say, is definitely improved. It was good before, but now I'm so grateful to have a job. It's given me real motivation to try and do well. And the difference it's made to the family, instead of just going to the supermarket and just try and decide between some, say, toilet rolls and milk, we can go and do a proper shop. And we've got a car, so we can go out again, even if it's just for a walk to a beach or a forest. So life is just entirely different.
That's a great story to hear, Linda. Do you put that down to an optimistic economy and a belief in recovery?
I certainly believe that has influence on that, because when I first started looking for jobs when I was initially unemployed, there were very few jobs for me to apply to in Scotland. And so much so that when I did apply for jobs, even things part-time, such as working, serving customers in a bakery, there were 70 applicants for that part-time position. Whereas about 8 months ago, a year ago, I started to see more jobs that I could apply for. And so that really indicates that obviously there's more investment and more growth of business within the economy. But I just don't think we should be complacent, because there's lots of people where I was last year.
Well, absolutely. And just very quickly, Linda, do you see any visual signs that things are improving? Or do you think the benefits cuts have affected and changed the social landscape so much?
Well, I do think the benefits cuts have really given a slant on how things are perceived. So it's not all good. I think the fact that the benefit cuts and people being suspended from their benefits has made a big difference. It looks like there's more people in employment than there perhaps are. But I definitely see visual signs of an economic improvement, because, as I say, there was more jobs out there for me to start applying to. And also things like a year and a half ago, there were 16, 17-year-olds getting part-time jobs in the shops. It was people who were desperate to work. Whereas I've certainly noticed in my local area that there's far more children in the holidays able to actually get some part-time work to give them some experience and also help them have their CV with some practical experience as well.
Which is good. Thank you for your story, Linda. We're going to discuss this further. Does Scotland's economic recovery feel real to you? We'll be talking about that a little later in the programme, but at 9:30. And Marie's on the travel desk. Good morning.
Good morning, Kathy. Thank you. Well, it's not at all bad on the main roads and the trunk routes now. It's steady both ways at Redcorn on the Edinburgh City bypass. Same at Dunfermline on the way to the Forth Road Bridge, and that's southbound. In Edinburgh itself, Nidri Mains Road, you've got a first water main to contend with at the Wisp Crossroads. Freeway temporary traffic lights controlling the flow here. Traffic is said to be running okay for now, though. Dumfries and Galloway, the A75 eastbound at Glenluce. Temporary traffic lights here. There's some resurfacing work going on at the junction of the A747. That's the road which leads to Port William eventually. Trains are looking largely fine across the network. And the Thai Music Festival is on this weekend, so a few changes to come, like ferry timetables. Do double check. Queen's Baton is in Western Bartingshire today, making its way through 16 locations. Should be in Clydebank around now, then on to Dalmuir in about 20 minutes time. So do be patient, do enjoy. That's BBC Radio Scotland Travel.
Thanks very much indeed, Anne-Marie. We're talking litter. We're talking about the littering of some of Scotland's beauty spots. Whose responsibility is it to keep them clean? Is it ours? Each and every one of us. And a lot of you out there cleaning up after others. A few texts. the amount of litter from an anonymous texter on the sidings of the slip roads on junctions 5 and 6 of the M74 need to be cleaned up, especially with the Commonwealth Games triathlon taking place at Strathclyde Park next Thursday and Saturday. Not a good impression to give our Commonwealth visitors. The countryside code, leave nothing except footprints, take nothing except photographs, would seem to have been of relevance in the 80s without prejudice, JP says. And Jane by text, teach children at nursery and primary 1 not to drop litter out. Sure they were. Interesting though, I want to hear from you. What's been your experience in general, and have you actually come across people, watched people walk away and leave their litter behind them? Sandy Maxwell works for the John Muir Trust. He's with us. Good morning to you, Sandy.
Good morning. Good morning.
A lot of good work being done out there by individuals clearing up after not such good countryside dwellers or visitors, it would appear. What does the John Muir Trust do in this context?
Well, the John Muir Trust, we own quite a few of the really iconic parts of Scotland. I suppose the most famous one is the summit area of Ben Nevis itself. That's an area that we've had a large problem over many years, just clearing the amount of rubbish that gets left there. You have particular problems that a lot of the rubbish there is things like orange peel and banana skins that at that height just don't disintegrate the same way as they do at lower level. As well as at the top of some of our more iconic mountains like Schiehallion and Ben Nevis, we have a lot of coastline on our properties, and on that is a lot of our community partnerships. We are involved with lots of the big community buyouts like Art Foundation or North Harris Trust. And a lot of the most beautiful beaches, things like Luscantire Beach in West Harris, or Trivillin in North Harris, or our own Sandwood Bay up in the extreme northwest of the country, is very much covered in rubbish that comes in from the sea. So we get involved with clearing with volunteers on all our properties, and also educating, particularly on Nevis. You have a group of volunteers up there gathering rubbish, and it's amazing how someone will sort of walk up to you with their sandwich wrappers and sort of give it to you under the assumption that you've spent your own time to go up there to gather rubbish. It's a pleasure for them to give you some more.
Do you think, Sandy, that people just don't think about it? Do you think it's just willful damage, if you like, littering the countryside? Because when you think about it, the choice is you chuck it away because nobody's going to tackle you, or you take it into your own car or however you've travelled, you take it back with you and you dispose of it.
I think there's a mixture. On hills, some of it's accidental. People don't realise that if you unwrap your sandwiches on the top of a Monroe, it's a fair chance that they'll blow away all the wrappings. But yes, there is this sort of feeling that, I'm used to just dropping on the street because the street cleaners will come along behind. But there isn't organised street cleaners in wild places. You have somewhere like Glenetive or the West Highland Way, whatever. There isn't a council employee employed to go along and clean up behind you.
Well, absolutely. What I can't understand is why people would think that, because you go there because of the natural beauty. And surely you want to leave it the way you find it. Not least, of course, there's wildlife there who must surely suffer when people leave litter, bottles, broken bottles and so on. Why do you think these messages aren't getting through to people? Are we doing enough in terms of educating youngsters to the dangers that are involved, if you like, and the problems that are brought about by dumping litter?
I mean, in some places they are getting better. I mean, Ben Nevis, an example, is getting better than it used to be. We're finding that a lot of the guides that take groups up there, whether they're charity groups or other groups that are doing sort of 3 beach challenges and so on, they're getting better and better. They're starting to organise their groups. They're giving them a bag and a wee chat at the start of the day and say, look, don't only take that down your own rubbish, but good to take
there's not much we can do about it. We'll go and speak to them, we'll try and remind them, but basically that's it. So we've got no feedback from the police in the last 3 weeks, but we did report it. What I would say to young people in the area of Blantyre, that the young kids are actually better than the guys 17, 20 years of age.
So that's, yeah.
Are better than the adults, you know.
This is the difficulty, of course, Douglas, because the message seems to be that you start education young. Maybe that's something that's been started, but you feel that it's that kind of teenage group.
It's the teenagers that just don't care anymore. You know, it's a shame. I mean, even in central stations, they don't like to put rubbish in bins. There's no bins in central stations. So what are you supposed to do? Glasgow Central Station doesn't have any bins. Queen Street doesn't have any bins.
That's right.
No, so kids have got to be encouraged at that age. Even McDonald's and these places putting things on and saying, look, put it in your bin. You know, there's no encouragement.
Well, certainly it is a problem, but we know why there are bins in public areas like station and so on. It's a security issue. Absolutely, and it doesn't make it easy. And many of us have probably been, having to take cups, empty paper cups and so on with us in our bags, get rid of them somewhere else. But if you're a teenager and you're listening, well, what's your attitude towards litter? Because I want to be fair here. I don't want to be saying you're the ones who are guilty, because it goes right across the board. But if you're listening, I'd like to hear from you. Caroline, how do we then engage teenagers to be proud of their country?
Gosh, that's a big question. I think there's so much to be proud of in Scotland. From going back to the wild places, the landscape and scenery in Scotland is world renowned. We know that people come to Scotland, because of the scenery. And going back to tourism, tourism is everybody's business. Everybody is involved in tourism to a lesser or greater extent, and it really is about, everybody feeling that they've got a part to play in being proud of Scotland, and not dropping litter. The issue about the kind of the urban sort of countryside split, and I do wonder in terms of the bins issue, is whether or not people who live in urban areas, and let's face it, most people do live in urban areas, are encouraged to put things in a bin, and therefore if there isn't a bin, are people thinking, well, I don't know what to do with it, so I'll just drop it on the floor, when, the obvious answer is, well, if there isn't a bin, you put it in your pocket and you take it home with you.
And maybe that's the message we need to send out.
Yeah, so maybe there is a slightly different message in the countryside to say, well, it's not about putting it in the bin, it's actually about putting it in your pocket.
If you can't find a bin, take it home.
Exactly.
It's not exactly a snazzy slogan, but maybe
I'm sure somebody can make a much better...
maybe Richard could turn that into something successful. Harry's called in from Kirkcudbright. Good morning, Harry. Are you a teenager?
No, certainly not.
Oh, no.
It's way up the end of the scale.
I thought you were phoning to say it's not us. We're not the guilty
No,
ones.
what I am saying is it's not children is the problem, it's the adults. I heard I was listening to the chap from the John Muir Trust saying at the top of Ben Nevis, there are no kids in the top of Ben Nevis dropping litter. That's grown adults, and I've seen it all over, where people pull in with fancy, big fancy 4x4s and put tents up and all that, and then they let the kids run riot. It's not the kids' fault.
So how do we tackle it? We've heard about education, more bins, the responsibility of other people who just say, well, look, I came across this litter, I picked it up and threw it up. Do you think people are just complacent, say somebody else will clean up?
Yes, I do all the time. We go to Mall quite a lot, and I pulled the caravan into a wee quarry hole just above Tobermory. The last year when we pulled in, the stink was unreal. It was unused fish food that was lying in the That's not kids.
No.
I don't blame the kids, please.
Okay, so we're not blaming the kids. Harry's just championed their cause. Thank you for your call. I'm still looking for teenagers to phone in, and but it is a bit early in the morning, isn't it? It's just after 20 to 10. So maybe you're having a long lie, but if you are listening, or someone, just ask them to give me a ring, and we'll get this a balance here. Gus is on the line from Airdrie. Good morning to you, Gus. I'm very good.
That's one of the rules that they have. Most
do you think fine hitting them in their pocket?
Well, that's the other thing. We're all trying to campaign and with the more enforcement. And I was buying that up. When was the last thing you picked up your local newspaper or a national newspaper and heard of anyone being fined for litter dropping? And let's not take ourselves one of the biggest contributory factors to the litter problem is car drivers. And as soon as they've got that they throwing litter out, they should have to be better voice in the 50 pounds.
But if they haven't got a licence then.
Well, that's the point, right? The roadsides are absolutely litter.
Maybe that's the way to go. Maybe that's the way to go. Certainly a lot of strong feeling out there, Gus. Thanks for your call. Heaps and heaps of texts. I feel it's my duty to read some of them out. An anonymous texter. If people can take full cans out with them, surely it's even easier to take them home. It's all down to personal responsibility. Thank you, anonymous. Tim from Kip. Litter down here in Inverkip is caused by youngsters camping and drinking. Scotland's booze culture, he blames. Pauline in Glasgow, my daughter is 4. She knows that you put litter in a bin. We've been teaching her, she's well aware. Litter is a problem everywhere. I was in Belhouston Park in Glasgow yesterday and there was rubbish lying within feet of a bin. It's just laziness and ignorance, pure and simple. Overflowing bins, that can be a problem too. Craig in Perth, we were at Loch Tay when we came across an area where there had been a fisherman staying. He had left a mound of litter, a piece of which was his pay slip. And Jill, astounded at cinema food packaging left in cinema by parents of 3 young kids sitting next to us, bins right by the door. So maybe the issue isn't bins. Sandy, are we going to see a change? Do you think this culture is something that's going to be easy to change, amend?
Oh, it's not going to be easy, but I do think there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think we're getting better in some of our worst spots. It's going to be an ongoing problem for landowners like John Muir Trust and National Trust of Scotland. And we just have to keep on egging away at people and reminding them about it.
And embarrassing them, I think, as Caroline was saying. Caroline, one email says that my husband suggests that when someone is caught littering, they should be given a reflective jacket with the words litter left on it and made to pick up litter in the area they were caught.
Oh yes, a superb idea.
Maybe that's the way to go. My thanks indeed to you both. My thanks indeed to all our callers on this subject.
Glasgow 2014 with Richard Gordon.
You see roads being closed off. You see little notices warning you that in a few days' time you might not get through. We're all going to have to be patient. I'm going to say I'm going to spend time walking around the city. I'll be leaving hours and hours before we're due to go on air, and I'll just be soaking up the atmosphere. And I think that's going to be as big a part of the whole event as the games themselves.
Every day of the games from morning till night. All the buzz, all the music, all the action, and our pledge to bring you every Scottish medal-winning moment live as it happens. BBC Radio Scotland. On air, online, and at the heart of Glasgow 2014.
It's Friday, you're listening to Morning Call with me, Cathy MacDonald. According to the latest figures, Scotland's economy is getting back to pre-recession levels, with almost half of the businesses surveyed saying they had experienced an increase in turnover. That's both in the public and private sector. However, on the downside, actual wages or average earnings rose by just 0.7% over the year, while inflation is running at 1.9%. So are we right to feel optimistic about things? And perhaps more important or more pertinent to the average man and woman, does Scotland's recovery feel real to you? What's your situation? Is it different to where you were this time last year? Do you still think there's a recovery? And how does that translate in terms of the life that you're living? 0500 92 95 00 is the number to call, and you can text 80295. I'm asking if Scotland's recovery, economic recovery, feels real to you. Now, to explain it a whole lot better than I can, I'm joined by a business journalist and political commentator, Bill Jameson. Good morning to you, Bill.
Good morning to you.
Can you just outline some of this recent good news that we're hearing about Scotland's economy?
Well, we've had a stream of very good figures in the past few weeks. The latest came out earlier this week, showing a very strong performance of
confidence. Can we rely on that happening?
Yes, I think we can. One note of caution about the average earnings figures is that they're a bit like average house prices. Very few people live actually in an average house, and there's a wide discrepancy of price behaviour across the UK. London is booming, the rest of the country is much more stable, and it's the same with average earnings. If you look at the reports from private sector recruitment agencies, they're saying there's a shortage of skilled labour, that wage rates are going up, that people taking on jobs now in the professional areas and skilled market areas are seeing pay rises running between 4.5% and 5% a year. However, looking at the picture overall, there's no doubt that the big growth in employment has been in lower paid jobs and in less skilled jobs, and that's been a big factor in keeping down the growth in average earnings.
Okay, well, we can't dispute the figures, but how do people feel? And is what you've said, Bill, what they're experiencing? Dennis Curran is chairman of Loaves and Fishes. Good morning to you, Dennis.
Good morning.
What Bill was saying there, would you say that's a fair assessment of what you're experiencing and seeing in communities around Scotland?